Malik Johnson stepped into the bookstore, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and polished wood, an intoxicating blend that whispered promises of adventure and knowledge. He had dreamt of this moment for years, imagining himself wandering the aisles, surrounded by the very tomes that had fueled his passion for writing. At 18, he was bright-eyed, with glimmers of ambition shining in his gaze. Today, he was not just an ordinary visitor. He was a dreamer, a future author who sought inspiration among the shelves of this high-end bookstore. As he walked further inside, Malik marveled at the soaring shelves lined with hardcover editions, their spines gleaming under the soft glow of ambient lighting. He brushed his fingers against the books, feeling the textured covers beneath his touch. He could almost hear the stories calling out to him, urging him to explore their worlds. He had often imagined himself writing alongside the greats, his name etched into the spines of books that would one day grace these very shelves. "Excuse me, do you know where the poetry section is?" A voice interrupted his reverie. Malik turned to see a well-dressed woman with perfectly manicured nails flipping through a book. I think it's over there," he pointed vaguely, feeling a rush of embarrassment. He was still out of place here, surrounded by affluent patrons who seemed to glide through the store with an effortless grace that he felt he could never replicate. "Thanks," she replied, barely glancing at him before returning to her book. Malik watched her disappear into the next aisle, a sense of longing washing over him. He wanted to belong in this world, to feel the comfort of familiarity amongst the literary elite. Yet, the whispers of self-doubt crept in, reminding him of the barriers that often stood between him and his dreams. As he moved deeper into the store, he overheard a group of patrons discussing their favorite authors near the cafe. Their laughter rang out, mingling with the soft clinking of coffee cups. "I just adore Fitzgerald. The way he captures the jazz age is simply breathtaking," one man exclaimed, his voice rich with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. And don't even get me started on Toni Morrison. Her prose is like poetry," a woman chimed in, her voice filled with admiration. Malik stood frozen, listening intently. Each name mentioned felt like a door to a world he yearned to enter, yet it also magnified his insecurities. Would they ever discuss his work in such reverent tones? The thought felt like a distant dream, obscured by a fog of doubt and societal expectations. Just as he turned away to ponder these feelings, the atmosphere shifted abruptly. A stern-looking man in a blazer, the store manager, approached him, his expression severe. Malik's heart sank. He had seen that look before, often directed at people who looked like him. "Excuse me, sir," the manager said, his voice cold and authoritative. "I need to ask you to step outside." Malik's stomach churned. "Why?" "I'm just looking around," he stammered, confused and anxious. "You've been acting suspiciously," the manager replied, his tone unwavering. "We can't have that in this store." "What? I'm just browsing," Malik protested, his voice rising. The patrons nearby turned to watch, their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. "Sir, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," the manager insisted as two security guards approached, their presence looming ominously. Humiliation washed over Malik as he felt their eyes boring into him, the whispers growing louder. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to see the books," he cried out, but his words fell on deaf ears. The guards flanked him, and as they escorted him toward the exit, Malik felt a mix of rage and despair well up inside him. The door swung shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his mind. Outside, the sun felt harsh on his skin, contrasting sharply with the warmth of the bookstore he had so desperately wanted to be a part of. As he walked away, the weight of the incident settled heavily on his shoulders. The humiliation was unbearable, but beneath it, a flicker of determination ignited. This was not the end, it was merely a catalyst. He would rise from this moment, and they would know his name. Malik stepped through the door of his modest home, the weight of the world pressing down on him like a heavy fog. The familiar scent of his mother's cooking wafted from the kitchen, but it did little to lift his spirits. He felt like a ghost in his own life, haunted by the humiliation he had just endured at the bookstore. His mother, Lydia, was at the stove, stirring a pot of gumbo, her back turned to him. "Hey, Malik, you're back early," she called, her voice brightening the otherwise somber atmosphere. She turned around, her smile fading as she caught sight of his expression. "What happened?" Malik hesitated, the words choking him. He had always been open with his mother, but this felt different. I was accused of stealing," he finally managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. Lydia's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Malik, you're kidding, right?" "No, Mom. I wish I was," he replied, his hands clenching into fists. "They didn't even give me a chance. They just assumed—" "Assumed what?" "That you, of all people, would steal from a bookstore." Her voice trembled with indignation. "That's ridiculous." "It doesn't matter what's ridiculous," Malik said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "What matters is that they treated me like a criminal. They didn't see a kid with dreams. They just saw a black man in a fancy store." Lydia stepped toward him, her expression softening. "You know what? They don't define you, Malik. You know who you are. You need to channel this anger into something productive. Write it down." "Right," he scoffed, but deep down, he felt a flicker of hope. "What do you think I should write about?" "How the world is unjust. How I don't fit in anywhere." "Exactly," she said, nodding enthusiastically. "Write about your experiences. Use your pain as fuel. You have a gift, Malik. Don't let their ignorance extinguish your light." Malik sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can do it, Mom. What if no one wants to read what I have to say?" "Then you write for yourself," she encouraged, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You write because you have a voice that needs to be heard. You've always had stories in you. Now it's time to let them out." With his mother's words resonating in his mind, Malik spent the following years pouring his heart into his writing. He filled notebooks with stories, characters, and worlds that reflected both his struggles and his hopes. Each rejection from a publisher stung like a fresh wound, but he found solace in the act of writing itself. "Dear author," he read aloud from one rejection letter, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "While we enjoyed the premise of your story, we do not feel it's the right fit for our catalog at this time." He crumpled the paper and tossed it aside, frustration boiling within him. "Malik, don't let it get to you," Lydia said gently, coming to sit beside him on the couch. "Every great author faced rejection. It's part of the journey." "Yeah, but it feels like I'm stuck in a loop," he admitted, staring at the stack of rejection letters on the coffee table. "What's the point of pouring my heart out if no one cares?" His mother took a deep breath, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe you just need to find your tribe. Look for other writers. Join a community where you can share your work and get support." That suggestion lingered in Malik's mind, and he soon found himself searching online for writing groups. It was there that he discovered a vibrant community of aspiring authors. They shared their struggles, offered encouragement, and celebrated each other's victories. In one forum, he typed, "I'm Malik. I've faced a lot of rejection, but I'm determined to keep writing. Any advice?" Within moments, responses flooded in. "Don't give up. Every rejection is one step closer to acceptance. Share your story. It matters, and we're all in this together." For the first time in years, Malik felt a sense of belonging. He began to share snippets of his work, and the feedback he received was a balm to his wounded spirit. "Your writing is powerful, Malik," one member wrote. "It resonates with so many of us." With each supportive message, Malik's resolve strengthened. He realized that his experiences, both painful and triumphant, could be woven into stories that might one day inspire others. As he wrote, the weight of his past began to lift, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. Malik Johnson sat at his modest desk, the afternoon sun streaming through the window, illuminating the pages of his completed manuscript. It was a moment he had envisioned countless times throughout his arduous journey, yet it still felt surreal. The title, Echoes of Injustice, adorned the cover in bold letters, a testament to his struggles and triumphs. He had woven his experiences of racial prejudice and the pain of being wrongfully accused into a narrative that he hoped would resonate with others. After days of agonizing over the decision, he finally mustered the courage to submit his manuscript to a small publishing house he had researched extensively. He clicked the send button and felt an overwhelming rush of emotions: relief, fear, and an inkling of hope. Malik leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes to reflect on the journey that had culminated in this moment. Memories of the bookstore incident flooded his mind, each recollection a reminder of how far he had come. "Malik, you've done it," he whispered to himself, though the echo of self-doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. Would they truly understand the depth of his story? Would they see the truth he had lived? Malik shook off the thoughts, choosing instead to focus on the positive. He had completed what he set out to do, and that was worth celebrating. Days turned into weeks, and Malik busied himself with promoting his work online, joining forums, and engaging with fellow writers. One afternoon, his phone buzzed, breaking the silence of his small room. Stomach churning with anticipation, he glanced at the screen to see an email notification from the publishing house. "Congratulations," it read. His heart raced as he opened the message, his eyes scanning the words that confirmed his fears and dreams. They wanted to publish his book. "This is it," he exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air. His mother, who had been folding laundry nearby, rushed into the room, curiosity etched on her face. "What happened?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "They accepted my book, Mom. They really want to publish it." Malik could hardly contain his enthusiasm, and his mother enveloped him in a tight embrace. "Oh, Malik, I knew you could do it. All those late nights and early mornings paid off," she said, tears of joy glimmering in her eyes. As the book began to gain traction online, Malik found himself receiving messages from readers who shared similar experiences. Some recounted their stories of racial profiling, while others expressed how his narrative had given them courage. Each message filled him with a sense of purpose, igniting a fire within him that pushed him to continue sharing his story. He was no longer just a victim. He was a voice for the voiceless. One evening, as he prepared for an upcoming literary event, Malik received a phone call from an event organizer. "We'd love for you to speak at our next panel discussion," the organizer said, their tone brimming with enthusiasm. "Your story is powerful, and we believe it could inspire so many people." "Oh, wow, thank you. I'd be honored," Malik replied, his heart pounding in his chest. The idea of standing in front of an audience, sharing his truth, both thrilled and terrified him. As the date approached, Malik rehearsed his speech, practicing in front of the mirror. "I want to remind everyone that our stories have the power to change perceptions," he practiced, his voice growing stronger with each repetition. "We must rise above prejudice and find healing through understanding." On the day of the event, Malik arrived at the venue, a bustling community center filled with aspiring writers and enthusiastic readers. He felt a mix of nerves and excitement as he took his place at the podium, glancing at the crowd that had gathered. Faces of all ages and backgrounds looked back at him, some nodding in anticipation, others simply curious. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady despite the flutter in his stomach. "I want to share my journey with you, a journey born from pain but transformed through the power of storytelling." As he spoke, he saw heads nodding in understanding, eyes widening in empathy. "I was once a young man who dreamed of writing, only to find myself unjustly accused and humiliated in a place that should have inspired me," he continued, the memory of that fateful day at the bookstore flashing vividly in his mind. "But it was through my writing that I found my voice and reclaimed my narrative." As he shared his experiences, laughter and tears filled the room. Malik could feel the energy shift, a collective sense of unity forming among the audience. He had not just shared his story. He had ignited a spark of hope and resilience within others. Each word he spoke was a testament to the transformative power of literature, a reminder that through adversity, one can rise from the ashes and inspire change. Malik Johnson stood outside the upscale bookstore, a place that had once been a sanctuary for his dreams, but had simultaneously served as the backdrop for his greatest humiliation. He took a deep breath, the crisp autumn air filling his lungs, and stepped inside. The familiar scent of freshly printed pages and polished wood enveloped him, stirring a mix of nostalgia and trepidation. As he walked through the aisles, the soft murmur of customers and the rustle of pages turning surrounded him. He spotted a few familiar faces among the staff, some of whom had been there on that fateful day when he was wrongfully accused of theft. Their expressions varied. Some were curious, others guarded, and a few appeared to recognize him immediately, their eyes widening in disbelief. "Is that Malik Johnson?" he overheard one staff member whisper to another, who shrugged in response. Malik ignored the chatter, focusing instead on the shelves filled with books that had once ignited his passion for writing. Titles that had inspired him to weave his own stories now seemed to mock him with their success. He made his way to a cozy nook where he had spent many afternoons, lost in the pages of novels that transported him to different worlds. As he settled into a chair, he could almost feel the weight of his past pressing down on him. The memories of that day flooded back. The accusations, the humiliation, the feeling of being stripped of his dignity. But he was no longer that scared young man. He was a best-selling author, a voice for those who had been silenced. "Can I help you?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Malik looked up to see a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, with bright eyes and an eager smile. She wore a name tag that read Jenna. "Yes, actually," Malik replied, his voice steady. "I'm Malik Johnson. I wrote the book that's been getting some attention lately." Jenna's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, wow. I've heard of you. Your book is incredible. I can't believe you're here." "Thank you," he said, a hint of a smile breaking through. "I wanted to come back to this place. It means a lot to me." Jenna nodded, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "I know the story. What happened to you back then was awful. I was here that day. It was shocking." Malik's heart raced at her acknowledgement. "It's taken me years to get to this point. I just want to find some closure." "Closure," she echoed. "What do you mean?" "I want to confront the past," he said, his voice firm. "I need to face the people who judged me without knowing me." Jenna's expression softened. "That's brave of you. I hope it goes well." As he spoke with Jenna, Malik felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this visit wouldn't just be about confronting the past, but also about reclaiming his narrative. With a newfound determination, he decided to approach the manager who had accused him all those years ago. The store manager, a portly man with thinning hair, sat at a desk near the checkout. Malik's heart raced as he approached, the memories of humiliation flooding back. The manager looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Malik. "What do you want?" the manager asked, his tone defensive. Malik took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I want to talk about what happened here a few years ago." The manager shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That was a long time ago. We've moved on." "Have you?" Malik shot back, his voice rising slightly. "Because I haven't. You accused me of theft without even giving me a chance to explain myself." The manager's expression hardened. "You were acting suspiciously. We had to protect our customers." "Protect them from what? A young black man browsing books?" Malik's voice was steady, but the anger bubbled beneath the surface. "I was there to find inspiration, not to steal." The manager opened his mouth to respond, but Malik continued, determined to have his say. "You don't know what it's like to be judged by the color of your skin. You don't know how it feels to be stripped of your dignity in front of strangers." As the confrontation intensified, Jenna stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. "You should listen to him. What happened that day was wrong, and it's time for you to acknowledge it." The manager glanced at her, his discomfort evident. "This isn't the time or place for this," he muttered, looking away. Malik stood tall, refusing to be dismissed. "No, it's exactly the right time. You need to understand the impact of your actions." The tension in the air was palpable, and Malik felt a surge of empowerment. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all those who had been wronged and silenced. As he faced the manager, he realized that this confrontation was the first step towards healing, not just for himself, but for others who had suffered under the weight of prejudice. Malik stood tall in the middle of the bookstore, the familiar scent of leather and old paper swirling around him like a bittersweet perfume. His heart raced as he locked eyes with the manager, Mr. Thompson, whose face paled upon recognizing him. The years had transformed Malik from the scared teenager who had been wrongfully accused into a confident best-selling author. but the scars of that day remained etched in his memory. "Mr. Thompson," Malik said, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of emotion. "We need to talk." The manager shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the other employees who were now observing the confrontation with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "I don't see what there is to discuss, Malik," he replied, attempting to keep his tone casual, though his eyes betrayed his discomfort. "That was a long time ago. Long enough for you to forget how you humiliated me." Malik shot back, his resolve hardening. "You accuse me of stealing in front of everyone here. You know nothing about me, and yet you judged me based solely on the color of my skin." "Now, hold on," Mr. Thompson stammered, his face flushing. "It was a misunderstanding. I had my reasons." "Reasons?" Malik interrupted, his frustration boiling over. "You mean your bias? Your prejudice? I was a kid, Mr. Thompson. All I wanted was to be part of a world that you closed off to me. You didn't even give me a chance." Malik's voice echoed through the aisles, drawing the attention of other patrons. He could feel the weight of their gazes, some sympathetic, others skeptical. His heart raced as he pressed on, determined to make his voice heard. "Do you know how many times I've relived that moment? How many nights I spent writing just to prove to myself that I am more than that accusation?" Suddenly, from the back of the store, a former employee named Lisa stepped forward. "Malik," she called, her voice strong and clear. "I was there that day. I saw everything." Mr. Thompson's eyes widened as Lisa approached, her expression fierce. "You can't just brush this off as a misunderstanding. It was racial profiling, plain and simple. Malik was just browsing like any other customer. You chose to target him based on your own biases." "Lisa, this isn't the time," Mr. Thompson said, his voice sharp. "You don't know the full story." "I know enough," she replied, crossing her arms defiantly. "You've done this before, haven't you? Accusing people without any proof, just because of the way they look. It's not right, and you know it." Malik felt a swell of gratitude towards Lisa. Her courage to speak out was a reminder of the community that had rallied around him in the years since that fateful day. "Thank you, Lisa," he said, his tone softer now. "It takes a lot of bravery to stand up and tell the truth." The tension in the air thickened as onlookers began to murmur among themselves. Malik could see expressions of disbelief, outrage, and even pity reflected on their faces. He turned back to Mr. Thompson, who was visibly sweating, his bravado crumbling. "I'm not the only one who suffered that day," Malik continued, his voice echoing with conviction. "You've perpetuated a cycle of fear and mistrust, not just for me, but for countless others who walked through these doors. It's time for accountability." Mr. Thompson opened his mouth to protest, but the words caught in his throat. He looked around at the crowd, realizing that they were no longer just passive observers. Many had begun to nod in agreement, their expressions shifting from curiosity to solidarity. "Is this the kind of place you want to support?" Malik asked the gathering crowd. "A store that judges based on appearances rather than character? I refuse to let fear silence me anymore. We deserve better." The bookstore, once a symbol of Malik's dreams, had become a battleground for justice. The air crackled with tension as he stood firm, ready to confront the shadows of his past. This moment was not just about him. It was about every person who had been wronged, every voice that had been silenced. And with Lisa by his side, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. As the murmurs grew louder, Malik knew that the truth was finally coming to light, and he was no longer alone in his fight. Malik stood in the center of the bustling bookstore, a place that had once been the stage for his humiliation but now resonated with the echoes of his triumph. He had come full circle, a best-selling author, and yet the weight of that history pressed heavily on his shoulders. With a resolute heart, he scanned the room, his eyes landing on the manager who had once unjustly accused him. The man appeared anxious, shifting from foot to foot as he noticed Malik's unwavering gaze. "Mr. Thompson," Malik called out, his voice steady and loud enough to cut through the murmurs of the patrons. The bookstore fell silent as all eyes turned to him, the atmosphere charged with tension. "I think it's time we addressed what happened here years ago." The manager's face flushed, and a nervous chuckle escaped his lips. "Malik," he began, but Malik raised a hand, silencing him. No excuses. You took my dignity, my dreams, and you did it based on nothing but prejudice. Malik's words reverberated through the bookstore, igniting a mix of admiration and discomfort among the onlookers. You didn't just accuse me of theft. You accused me of being less than human. Whispers erupted among the crowd, and Malik noticed a few familiar faces. People who had supported him online, friends he had made in his writing journey. They nodded, their encouragement fueling his resolve as he continued. I'm not here to seek revenge. I'm here to demand accountability. You need to understand the harm you caused, not just to me, but to everyone who has faced similar treatment in this establishment. Malik's voice rose, infused with the passion of the countless words he had written, the stories that had emerged from his pain. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, his bravado waning. I'm sorry, Malik. I was wrong. Sorry isn't enough, Malik interjected, his tone firm. Apologies mean little without action. This bookstore needs to change. Your policies, your training, and your attitudes toward people who don't fit your narrow view of who belongs here. As if on cue, the clamor of protesters outside surged into the space, their voices chanting for justice and change. Malik's heart raced. The story of his wrongful accusation had gone viral, igniting a movement that called for an end to racial profiling in the bookstore and beyond. Look outside, Thompson. Malik gestured to the windows where a growing crowd was gathering, holding signs that read "Justice for Malik" and "No more racism in bookstores." People are here because they want change. They want to see accountability. This isn't just my fight. It's for everyone who has been marginalized and silenced. The manager glanced out, his expression a mix of fear and realization. Malik could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The tide was turning. He felt the support of his community swelling around him, and it emboldened him further. Change starts with you. You have the power to create an inclusive space, to ensure that no one else has to experience the humiliation I did, Malik implored, his voice softer now, but no less powerful. Will you take that step? Silence enveloped the bookstore as Thompson, visibly shaken, nodded slowly. I will. I promise to work on our policies and ensure that we provide training on racial bias and inclusivity. It's time for us to do better. A cheer erupted from the crowd outside, and Malik couldn't help but smile. This was more than just closure for him. It was a pivotal moment for the bookstore and a testament to the power of resilience and community. Just then, a representative from the bookstore's corporate office appeared, having heard the commotion. What's going on here? He inquired, but as he took in the scene, he quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. Malik's story is our story now, someone in the crowd shouted. We demand change. With momentum building, the corporate representative nodded thoughtfully. We'll launch an internal review and take immediate steps to address these issues. Malik, would you consider hosting a reading event here? We'd love for you to be a part of this transformation. Malik was taken aback, but felt a rush of hope. I would love that, he replied, a smile breaking across his face. Let's turn this pain into progress. In that moment, surrounded by the people who had rallied behind him, Malik knew he had not only reclaimed his dignity, but had also sparked a change that could echo through the community. The bookstore, once a symbol of his shame, now stood as a beacon of hope and resilience, ready to open its doors to a new chapter.